Warning: tube amplifiers have lethal voltages inside them. Please do not attempt to build, test, or repair these without understanding and following all safety protocols. Hey y'all! Well, we're here to knock out another project in our season of completion, where we're trying to knock out a bunch of projects for the first of the year. One of them that's been on my plate for a long time is putting these FC60-5 ISO Tango output transformers on my R8. And I know some of y'all are going to be saying, is it smart, or why should I invest $1,000 in output transformers on a $1,500 amplifier? And does it make sense to buy this amplifier to do this? Maybe not. But if you own the amplifier, let's say you bought it for $1,500, and maybe you've done some mods to it, and you pretty much like the way it sounds, but you'd like to kind of take it to the next level, see if you could get some more detail and just sonic goodness out of it. And you decide, I don't want to spend $1,000. I'm going to sell this amp and go buy something that sounds better. Say you decide to do that. Sell the amp for $1,000. What are you going to buy for $2,000 that's going to sound as good as your already modified R8 that you've already rolled a bunch of tubes and you've invested in that whole thing, that's going to have these world-class output transformers? You're going to spend $5,000 buying an amp, a push-pull 45-watt amp that uses ISO Tango iron. And for $1,000, you can do it to your amp and get there without having to go spend $5,000 or $6,000 or hunting the world down trying to find somebody that actually uses these really good output transformers. So I think it's worth doing. I'm doing it to my amp. I'm excited to see what it's going to sound like, and that'll be in a future video after we finish up. Probably going to be a 2-video mod series, and then we'll do a final video doing the audio analyzer suite and my subjective listening test. If it's anything like the transformation that I got going from an EdCore output transformer on my 300B amp to this ISO Tango, I think I'm going to be really happy. So, anyway, let's get busy swapping out these output transformers. Okay, the first step in this process is we need to take these output transformers off, and the R8 has, these are fairly decent output transformers. They aren't like that early R300 that just had some serious issues. And you can see they've got like this black potting material. They changed this, I think, from the earlier R8 transformers. I remember seeing some that had like clear epoxy with, you could see the gravel in it. I'm not sure, who knows what's in here with all this epoxy stuff, and these aren't giant transformers, but they're not little, teeny tiny ones either. So when I was taking this apart, I did label all of these, and I ran out of my label tape. I got some more of this coming. I'm going to put some, legit labels on them, but I made sure I labeled the phasing of the transformer, like what I call the positive plate, the positive UL, and then the ground side plate, and the ground side UL with the B+, and then the 8 ohm, the 4 ohm, just in case we decide to use these in the future. They may make a good project for some other kind of budget amp that we want to do. So anyway, once you take them off, you're left with this square hole here, and you got these holes, and we put our plate here for our ISO Tango. You can see the bolt pattern is a little smaller, so we're going to have to drill some holes here, but the transformer itself extends past these holes far enough to cover up the holes that were originally in the chassis. So we're going to be able to bolt this down without leaving holes in the chassis or having to fill them with something or whatever. Let me kind of show you what that looks like. When you get that on there, looks like this. Now obviously this finish does not match these. And so I was trying to decide, do I want to, paint the ISO black to match this? But this is like some seriously glossy, like automotive finish type paint. And the chances of me being able to spray bomb these to match that super glossy finish is pretty much slim to none. Plus, this is kind of a really classic hammer finish kind of color that these Japanese transformers come. And so I'm going to paint this guy in the center with some hammer finish Krylon paint. The dark bronze is really close to this. And so we're going to be painting this one to match the new output transformers. And I think that'll have a nice look to it. And originally I was thinking about just installing one transformer and then doing a left to right kind of comparo. But I've got somebody coming to look at buying this amp from me, and they're coming in early December, and I need to get this knocked out. And so I'm going to, get the holes drilled, remove this other transformer, both sides, get the holes drilled, and then I'm going to loosen up the screws for this so I can raise it up a little bit off the chassis, and then get some, wide masking tape, mask off the chassis, and then paint this transformer, because I'll show you on the underside, there's a zillion wires on this transformer that there's really no reason to remove all of them. And I think I can, loosen this up, put some spacers under here to tighten it back down with a gap so that I can, like I said, mask off the chassis with some paper and masking tape or masking paper combo, and then spray this with that bronze or dark bronze hammer finish Krylon paint, and then install the transformers, and then everything will have, this nice hammer finish, kind of bronze color, which will give it a unique look. And then people know that's not just your run-of-the-mill R8. So let me flip it over and show you what I'm talking about on the transformer wiring. This is the relay board, which we're going to get rid of. I'm wiring the amp to be full-time ultralinear, which I prefer, think sounds so much better. If you're a triode guy, then I guess you could wire it triode, but I think the whole point of this amp is to have nice, good power, and that's what you get with ultralinear. And if you want to try to change the tone of the amp, just tube roll it. I think triode strapping a beam pentode is, I don't know, not my cup of tea. So I left all these wires hooked up so we know the phasing, that this plate wire, aligns with the ground on the output, because if you get the phasing inverted on the transformer, then the negative feedback turns into positive feedback. So you need to make sure you keep that the same. If you do make a mistake and hook it up backwards and you hook it, turn it on and it goes into like massive oscillation, you've got the transformer wired inverted. So, but you can see here, if I was going to remove this transformer to paint it, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 wires to unsolder. We're not doing that. And I think I can easily space this up by putting a washer under the edge of this, an 1/8 of an inch or so, and leave all these wires still connected. And that'll allow us to paint the transformer attached to the chassis. So that's my plan. And the transformer on this side was a little easier to remove, so that's the one I did first. This one you're going to have to flip this RCA board, relay board up out of your way, but still not going to be a huge deal. So that's my next step, is to flip this relay board out of the way, get this unbolted, unsolder all this wiring, and then get the chassis ready to paint the power transformer. The other thing that I'm not going to be able to do, normally you put this plate on the inside of the chassis, is a label of where everything goes and to show that it's got ISO transformers on it. Can't do that because it's got these standoffs, which we're not going to go through and remove all these standoffs. So we're just going to put these underneath the transformer. It's got a protective coating on it. Might even put like a piece of clear tape over this too to kind of protect it. So in the future, if somebody pulls these transformers off, they'll know what they are and how to wire them up. But yeah, unfortunately, this won't fit into there because that would look kind of cool. But I'm not going to sweat that. Again, this is about what is it going to sound like, not what it looks like with the bottom cover off of the amplifier. So yeah, let me get to removing this other transformer. We're going to paint the power transformer to match these ISO ones. And I think it's going to be a pretty simple job to install these, because the way these have like this turret on the bottom, we're just going to be hooking up these 5 wires, and then we're going to be hooking up this ground. And I'm probably going to go ahead and replace these speaker wires. They've, from being moved around and stuff, they're starting to fray a little bit. They're just not real solidly connected to the speaker jack. So I'm going to put new wires from these speaker jacks over to the transformer, and that's it, wiring it up. So the hardest part of this job is just, the mechanical, removing the output transformers, drilling the new holes. Also, the screws that come with the transformers are too short. They're, intended, they're assuming that you're going to have like a thin sheet metal type chassis that you're going to be bolting it to. Let me see if I can find one of those to show you what they look like. So it comes with these little guys. They look like that, little short ones. And this is pretty thick here. The aluminum for this top is thick, and it's got another piece of metal. This is a separate, the part with the standoffs is a separate piece of metal. So we're going to have to get these screws that were the original ones, and then get our Dremel tool and saw them off about this long. I'll measure and figure out how long these need to be to hold the new transformers down. And then, yeah, we've got the hardware. So that's not going to be a difficult thing to do. So let me get this little part finished up, and it's like a great place to wrap up this video. So here's how the paint turned out, and I know this power transformer is a little darker than these ISO transformers, but after trying a bunch of different spray bombs, this is the closest hammer finish color I could find to these. And I think it looks way better than leaving this black and putting these on. And I just did not want to paint these super nice finished transformers to try to make them glossy black. I think that would have looked way worse than this little bit of mismatch. Now, if this drives you crazy, I don't know what to tell you. Go buy an ISO power transformer, or find somebody to custom paint that one. That's probably going to cost more than buying an ISO transformer would be. So, yeah, I'm going to live with it. I'm good with it. I think it looks really cool. Now, here's the way I masked it off. And I loosened the screws for the transformer, lifted it up a little bit, put some washers under it, tightened the screws back down, and then a combination of masking tape and a trash bag. There you go. That was the mask job. So, yeah, we're pretty close now. All I got left to do is use these little templates that come with the transformer that shows you where to put the holes, get the holes drilled, get the screws shortened, mount the transformers down. Then, by then, this paint's going to be nice and dry. Flip the amp over, get inside, solder up those connections, which I'll show in the next video, and then we'll be ready to power this thing up and run it through the audio analyzer suite, do some subjective listening, and see if this thing sounds as good as I think it's going to. So again, I know some of you may not be able to do this whole, I'm going to spend $1,000 on some output transformers on an amp I paid $1,500 for. I think this amp's worth it. The circuit design just a plain Jane kind of classic Muller design. There's nothing that weird or oddball about it. It does have this center tube that does that capacitor multiplier voltage regulation kind of a thing for the input tube power supply, which I think is kind of cool. It does give you another tube to roll into the amp that does impact the sonics of it, and especially like the sound stage. I've really noticed that about that tube. And initially I was saying I don't think that tube's going to make any difference, but after rolling tubes into it, it absolutely does. And I found, at least with my setup, it sounds better with different 6S and 7 tubes in the phase splitters than the one I'm using in that center position. So they don't all three have to match. You can mix and match, and I would keep the channels the same left and right, but as far as the center tube, you don't have to use the same 6S and 7 that you put here. So that's a fun thing to experiment with. The chassis is well made, especially after you put the mil-spec bias pots in them and do the other little mods that I've done to it. And now the version 2 has the safety resistors and the bias boards and all that kind of stuff. I think this amp's worth spending the money on. So, hey, that's for you to decide. Anyway, hope you're enjoying this content. If you are, please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video. Thanks to all you Patreon supporters and the other folks that help support the channel, especially folks that just watch the videos. I really appreciate you guys subscribing and being regular viewers. That's what keeps this channel going. And I also appreciate you folks that make donations when you find content that I've done, like these mod series for different amps, was helpful for you modding yours, so you're not wasting time and money and all that stuff. And if you find value in these, please consider giving me a little donation at the website. And until the next video, have a nice day.